I believe very strongly as followers of Jesus that we're supposed to hear this and say, what can I do to help? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Please be seated. When you come up for communion, I hope that you will take a look at the altar rail cushions, rather. We've put them all back. They've been gone for a while, and then about a third of them were back. As of this morning, we put them all back. There's a map of them in the sacristy. They go all the way from the Lamb is the first one, which is a reference to St. John's Gospel, but they do all of Jesus' life from the Annunciation all the way through to the end. And there's two cushions that don't specifically have Jesus in them, the first and the last. At coffee hour, I hope that you will be able to tell me what the last one is. It's kind of an adventure going around figuring out which cushion is which scene in Jesus' life. Some are more obvious than others. Some you will be helped out by the context of the next cushion or the previous one, that sort of thing. But they go in order. They are one of the really treasured pieces of this parish. They, I think, were done throughout the 60s and 70s and dedicated. There's a plaque behind me that says they were finally dedicated in 1982. It's like a moving picture, very old school. You kind of get these snapshots of Jesus' life on each cushion. And I think for most of us, sometimes the scenes are obvious. Like there's one that has a red devil in it, which is probably Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. There's another one where there's a family at a creche and it's probably Christmas, right? Most of those scenes, though, when you see them, there's one of the ones in the middle, I'll give it away, but the ones in the middle are Jesus is teaching the Sermon on the Mount, and then Jesus is feeding 5,000, and underneath it I can't tell what's there, but there's also Jesus teaching the children, which we have a window of as well. But usually in these scenes, I think for most of us, our knowledge of the scriptures, of Jesus' life and ministry in particular, are pretty generalized, right? When you think of Christmas, you probably think of some scenes. You might not have it in your head exactly what happens in St. Matthew's Gospel versus exactly what happens in St. Luke's Gospel. Same thing with the Beatitudes for today, right? You probably know them in a slightly different form from St. Matthew's Gospel. Matthew gives us 9 of them. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the peacemakers. If you're a Monty Python fan, it's the cheesemakers. But blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. You probably know those as your default Beatitudes. And you probably may remember that that's Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Today's gospel from St. Luke is similar, but it's different. We get the Sermon on the Plain. It matches up pretty well with what is taught in the Sermon on the Mount, but Luke gives us a different version of this. And you can look at this a couple of different ways. Sometimes people will say, well, this obviously happened twice. Other times people will say, this is Luke's version of the same event, and it's slightly different. I think it's probably likely that Jesus had a lot to say on a lot of different occasions in a lot of places. And so he probably preached on a mountain at one point, mirroring Moses, and he probably preached in a plain at other points. And the sermons were probably similar and different as he went through his ministry. I'm leading a Bible study on St. Matthew's Gospel, and we recently read the Beatitudes, the Blessed Are's in Matthew's Gospel. And someone asked, are these unique to Jesus? And my answer was, well, first, there's another version in Luke, but more importantly, no, they're not unique to Jesus. This is a style and a type of teaching that shows up all over the place in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures. We actually get an example of this today. The Psalm starts off, happy are they who have not walked in the counsel of the wicked. You could translate that. Blessed are they who have not walked in the counsel of the wicked. You could translate our gospel today, happy are the poor. So happy, blessed, those are Beatitudes. They show up in a lot of different places. We also, for what it's worth, you probably noted that St. Luke gives us not 9, but 4 Beatitudes. And he pairs them, unlike St. Matthew, with 4 equal and opposite woes. Those woes could be curses. We get an example of that in our reading from Jeremiah. Cursed are those who trust in mere mortals. Could be. Woe to those who trust in mere mortals. So Jesus is living into a pattern that we see. The book of Deuteronomy has a whole string of blessings and curses that Moses does, that the Psalms are full of. There's a psalm, or in the wisdom literature, is full of as well. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of children, right? Things like that. They're all over the place, as are the woes and curses. And usually, most of the time, it's a state of being that's a pretty good one, right? It's commending a state of being, emotional, spiritual, physical, your lot in life, right? The psalm today is a good example of that. Happy are those who do not walk in the counsel of the wicked. Could be another one. Happy is the person who's full and able to eat and has a great big family. These things appear all over the place. The curses, similarly, are things where you don't want to be. Jeremiah goes after people that trust too much in mere mortals. His point is trust in God. What's strange about the Beatitudes in today's gospel is really 2 things. They're not generalized. Did you notice that they are directed at you? Blessed are you when you are thirsty or hungry. Woe to you when you are rich. Woe to you who are laughing right now. That's fairly unique. They're usually directed to a general state of being. This is for the hearer, for each of us. The other thing that's fairly unique is it seems completely contrary. Most of the time it's obvious. This is a beatitude. Here is a perfect example of what a good lot in life looks like. Try to strive for it. Live into it. Right? Don't walk in the counsel of the wicked. Be blessed in a variety of different ways. Jesus goes the opposite route. And it can be really strange and kind of jarring to hear this. When you hear, blessed are you when you are mourning, what do you think of that? When you hear, blessed are you who are poor right now, blessed are you who are hungry now. Or, we live in Westchester County, most of us, blessed are you who are rich. Put us in the worldly position. Compare Westchester County to anywhere else on earth. And this probably is directed at all of us. Blessed are you who are hungry. Woe to you who are full. What's the big American health problem, aside from the pandemic? We're all totally obese, right? This is directed at each of us. And that can be really challenging and really hard to hear. There's a lot of ways that you can understand the Beatitudes and the woes of Jesus, but I want you to walk away with a couple of things today. They're directed at each of us, individually. And I hope that every single one of us hears them. And on the one hand, you can think, what does it mean to be blessed when you are poor, or blessed when you are mourning or weeping, or blessed when you are starving? And traditionally, the answer to that has been all of these worldly things, right, that people strive for, that many of the other Beatitudes have. All of these are things that sometimes you have and sometimes you don't. But in these specific things, Jesus is telling us that we are blessed by God no matter what our lot in life are. There is nothing you can do sometimes to get yourself out of poverty. There is nothing you can do. How many of us have been in a position where we're weeping and someone says something like, you'll be okay. It's going to be all right. How do you know? How do you know? This could ruin my life. I'm starving. Well, here's something to eat. It's going to be okay. Maybe right now, but not tomorrow. In those awful situations, Jesus assures us that God is always there. Always. And if you are not in that position, I believe very strongly as followers of Jesus that we're supposed to hear this and say, what can I do to help? Not, you'll get through this okay. More, how can I bless you in this moment of sadness and mourning? What can I do to make this situation go away, to make it better? And if it's not going to go away, how can I be present as God is present, even in the worst parts of this? The woes are equally challenging. I hear them, and maybe I'm the only one, but I'll tell you how I hear them. How did you get to this point? If you're rich or if you're hungry, how did you get there? Did you get to being rich or totally full or being acclaimed by others in a way that you kind of, look back and think, that's not a story I want to tell? The ethics of my wealth are terrible, therefore I will just pretend that didn't happen. The ethics of my pride and the fact that I'm well acclaimed in the world and how that happened was stepping all over other people. Woe to you if that is how you got there. And I also hear it as, what am I doing now in this position? Am I rich enough or full enough, or am I anything enough that when I hear Jesus say this, suddenly I think I'm on the wrong track? Are things going the wrong way in my life because all the blessings that I have are not being directed outward to others? So think about those two things. I unfortunately I struggle with these Beatitudes every time I read them. So if you have a better way of thinking about them, I'm all ears. But I think one thing that's really, really wonderful about them is they do leave you thinking every time you hear them. What does it mean for me? And I'm in a position where I can hear some hard words sometimes. So Jesus leaves us with some challenges this week. What are you going to do with them? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.